Kayla.
Oh yeah, I just feel really compelled to go as well, Rachel, because I'm totally there with you. Like very recently with the ritual package, totally, because I put it out and I couldn't celebrate it at all, and all I saw was all the things I'd done wrong in it. Like, oh, the beginning of the newsletter was too long, spelling mistakes everywhere that I thought I'd done, and then, like, because I just put it out there and then nobody responds because they've got it, haven't they? And then I'm like waiting to, like, oh, what do they think of it? Is it okay? And I have to just be so self-confident that it is okay and that I don't need to have that praise from anybody. And that is so hard. That's like a whole new, but so there becomes this, like, I decide, like, because there's a gap and I don't know how it's been received, I then create that story for myself, and it's always a negative one. And so I totally hear what you're saying, and I think for me, what I've really tried to sit with this time round, I mean, is doing things like saying, like, can we all celebrate, to help me as well, like letting that love in, so letting the love back for myself and opening my heart. And yeah, because I totally got stuck in my head as well, and I was going over the negative and I couldn't get past it, and I'm just trying to remember what it was that helped me. I think a lot of it was calling on my sisters and saying, hey, like, lovely Sue, you were celebrating and saying how wonderful it was, and actually looking back at the good things, like what were the good things about it and how that made me feel, and just keep focusing on the good stuff, all the time. I read this amazing article all about how we are hardwired as humans to focus on the negative. That is like, because it's like when something's negative, we learn from it, and it's like it creates like the trauma response or something, so it becomes bigger. Whereas it's easy to overlook the positive stuff. So there is something chemically about that might be why as well it's so much easier to do that. And it's about releasing the happy hormones. So like dancing and celebrating what you've done through dance, or tapping. I've been doing the tapping loads. Like, I've been actually going, like, this was the good bit, and didn't I do well? And even if I think it's bullshit and I don't believe myself, like, just do it until you believe it. And like, I did really well, and that was so wonderful, and oh, look at the design elements, and just let go of the small errors. And the one mantra which I've been working on, which came to me, which was, even when I give 100% to my project, I accept my imperfections within it. And that's like, that's a massive one for me. So I repeat that over and over again. Like, I accept my imperfections. Because I think it is to do with being like a perfectionist as well. So yeah, I don't know if that helps or resonates, but that's what I've been doing this month.
Yeah, definitely the perfectionism thing is there for me. I always kind of, a great one for telling other people, like, don't strive for perfection, because perfection is a construct, and it's not real and it's not possible. And then I'm like, why am I not perfect? So yeah, no, that's a good reminder.
Is it okay if I popcorn in next? So what came to me was something I'm doing with CBT, the cognitive behavioural therapy, which is a thought diary. So it's about cognitive restructuring, because I catastrophize quite a lot. So like you're saying, like that one tiny little thing would just, like the mountain out of a molehill kind of thing. And they do the thing where you have to look for evidence. So like you said, when you actually watched it back, that gave you more evidence to suggest that it was a smaller thing. So you can do that, or evidence for that thought and evidence against, by like taking yourself out and kind of witnessing the situation. So being more the observer. And I found that so helpful. And it just helps you find more of the balance between those negatives and positives, and actually look at it from a realistic point of view, rather than like outweighing the negative kind of thing. So, and you might find that, yeah, it was bad. So, but then you see it as a, okay, like Taylor was saying, that's a lesson to learn and grow from. So it just gives you that kind of step back and observer perspective. So I've got some papers. Maybe I think I've got a digital copy somewhere, so I'll send you a link to the exercise. I'll put it in a group if other people are interested as well. So, but yeah, I found that one really helpful. I need to remember to use it more, but it doesn't even help.
There's a couple of things that sort of rumbled for me there, things that people were saying. So one was, yeah, Kayla, I'm really glad you brought that thing up about how the brain is kind of skewed towards that accentuating the negative, because I've heard that recently a couple of times from different places, and I keep thinking I'd really like to do a bit of looking into why that is, because if it's something that, you know, if it's something that is just there in the neuroscience, and it's something that, you know, as soon as we start speaking like this, we're like, oh yeah, we all feel like that. So therefore I think I feel like I would probably find it really helpful to understand what the function of that is and why that is, because what does it, you know, what is the gift of that's because it can't be like, for me it feels like it can't be that like that for no reason if we all feel that. And the other thing I was thinking, because when you were talking about this presentation and the thing about the sort of like the tech, you know, the tech thing going wrong, and I was thinking about sometimes when I've done performances, but especially like Suki Silvertongue stuff, where I'm actually learning, you know, I've had to sort of learn specific script for it, and there's, you know, I feel like I have to go out there and I have to remember all the words and have to do it absolutely perfectly, but without fail, like every time I do get it wrong, I always get people saying how much they in a way, like how much they enjoy seeing me getting it wrong, because it makes me more human, because people don't necessarily want to see somebody doing an absolutely perfect presentation, because when we do something like, you know, the PowerPoint doesn't work, or we trip over a word, or something happens, it makes us more human, and it makes it more relatable, you know, makes us more relatable. So yeah, so I've sort of found that really, really helpful, and I know that I feel like that as well when I'm, you know, watching somebody give a performance or presentation. It's like when those things aren't perfect, it just makes me feel like, oh, I can feel more of a connection with that person now, because I know they're not just this like, oh yeah, they've got it all sorted. So oh yeah, I don't know whether that is kind of like a little helpful thing to just put in the mix, but it certainly has helped me. So yeah.
That's such a good point. It's such a good point. Like if I was watching a presentation and someone, I mean, most times when I go onto Zoom and watch a talk or presentation or something, there is some little techie thing that goes wrong, and I never like judge the person. I just think, oh, technology. It's just how it goes. So it's funny how harshly I judge myself, but how when I'm looking at other people, I'm like, oh yeah, of course, totally understand, you know. Yeah, good point.
I was just going to say that I think I've had to take a long time to step away from thinking that a kind of critical behavior is to do with me, and that it's more to do with the other person. So even though I've been working in the same school for like, I think it might be 3 years now, whenever I take a child out of particular people's classes, they would like roll their eyes or make a sort of sarcastic comment to the child, or look at me and be like, oh, we're doing a test, can you come back later? And I used to say yes, and now I don't. I used to sort of try and be a bit more kind of like, oh yeah, I'll just drop what I'm doing and come back and do what it suits you. But you know, these people know that these children are going to be taken out at this time every single week, so why are they making it difficult for me every single time? Something to do with them. It's nothing to do with me. It's something to do with a perceived idea of their value versus my value of work, like the work, I mean, not people, but or some sort of control element, or some sort of ownership over the child, and they don't want to share that ownership, or something like that. But I mean, it still riles me a little bit. But I used to sort of take it into the room and be sitting there fuming, whilst trying to do therapy, and that's never a good combination. So I've got better at like leaving it at the door and moving into the room with the child and letting that person stuff, but it's taken a really long time to see that as part of them, rather than as part of something to do with me. Yeah, so I guess what I'm trying to say is, like, when people criticize me now, which doesn't happen very often, that is like, that's the most common way for it to happen. I'm really trying to learn to take it as a message about how they see the world, rather than something directly, like, personally about me. And also, Kate, I just wanted to say that I've put 2 adverts out for play therapy and haven't had a completely no response at all whatsoever. And this time when I put my advert out, I said to myself, no one's going to respond. And so, you know, I haven't even checked my emails to see if they have, because I'm just so sure nobody's going to. But I just think, well, it's still putting the word out. Somebody might have seen it and they might have told their friend, and their friend who's having a problem with their child might be thinking about it. And, you know, maybe in 2 weeks or 2 months' time, they might think, oh, hang on, wasn't there that play therapist in Pure Valley? Oh, well, you know, and then, you know, so it might be that you've sown a seed and it's coming. It's just that it isn't like, oh, I saw your advert and I'd like you tomorrow.
Yeah, I like what you just said about that, Mel. You reminded me. I advertised a course on overcoming imposter syndrome back in, I don't know, I think it might have been January for February, and cancelled the course because I didn't get anyone on it. And filled the course the last time I did it. So it's a bit like Kipling, isn't it? If you can meet triumph and disaster and treat them the same. I think that's part of it. Yeah, a few things have come up for me from what folk have been sharing. That brain wiring thing is so interesting, isn't it? I've heard people say our brains are Teflon for the positive and Velcro for the negative. And I also read a long time ago, and it kind of shocked me actually, but it stayed with me, that we have 9 times the neurons to kind of home in on the negative than we do the positive. If Sue, you said you're interested in that. Rick Hansen is really good in that area, really good, if you know his stuff. And he's just so yummy. I really love Rick. He's a UC Berkeley neuroscientist, but first and foremost, I think he's a bit of an old hippie Buddhist. And he's great on the neuroscience of Buddhism, if you like, of awareness and what's going on in the brain. I think he's even got a book called Buddha's Brain, something like that. I might even have a copy. I'll have a look. I wanted to get really curious about perfectionism. I think that's something I hear women, and I very much include myself. I feel like I'm a recovering perfectionist, the way some people are recovering from other forms of self-harm. Really, I think it's self-harm in a, not a capital S, capital H, but I'm really curious about what's behind our perfectionism, I guess. For me, I can only speak for myself, so I want to preface what I'm going to say by saying I don't mean to be prescriptive or project this onto anyone else, but I think my own perfectionism is what I would call a disintegrated state. So I think there's a really young part of me that at a young age in my life got hold of the idea that if I got things right, whatever right meant, good, well done, in an acceptable way to adults or peers, whatever it was, then I was worthy of love and belonging. So I think those things get kind of bound up really early on. And as we get older and we learn differently, like the sort of what we might call the wise part of ourselves when we're on a good day, that becomes at odds with that script, I think. But it's a really compelling script at some level. So I've again, sorry, I'm speaking in the general, I should stay with this myself. I've found that, yeah, I mean, I can still go into perfectionism. I usually tell a tale on myself in the Overcoming Imposter Syndrome course where we're talking about perfectionism, and I will share with people that, you know, the slide that we're looking at, I tinkered with the font until midnight. Because, but I really do feel like I'm recovering from it. And there's a saying that Sheryl Sandberg uses at Facebook, which is better done than perfect. And when I first heard that, I thought, oh, fuck off, Sheryl, that's not right. It's got to be perfect. But actually getting something out, and I think this is the piece I wanted to get to, I find if I stop focusing on myself and focus on the thing that I'm trying to serve, it might be people, it might be some form of impact, it might be some form of difference, but it's to do with service and it's outside of myself. I find that really helps me take the focus away from myself. But I think now I'm saying that, I think a piece has come before that, which is to bring this younger part back into the fold and somehow integrate her and have her let go of the story that things need to be perfect in order for me to be worthy of love and belonging, because that is unconditional and it's not bound up in me being a particular way or doing a particular thing. And that's taken quite a long while, I think, to get that message in, but I think it's getting there. And I think the game changer for me around that was self-compassion, practicing self-compassion. And I loved, a couple of people said this, I think, Sue, you picked up a thread for this as well, around, like you were saying about the wiring of the neurons, and then we get on a meeting like this and everyone goes, oh God, yeah, I've got that. And we all realize it's a common thing. And in the mindful self-compassion work, the middle plank, there are 3 planks to that work. The middle plank is what they call common humanity. And like when we're in struggle, with how we tend to narrow down and think it's just us. And the invitation of that work, one of the great invitations of that work, is when we're in struggle to broaden out and connect. I often see myself, like when I'm struggling, I try and remember and like physically open my body and imagine that my arms are connected to other people. There's 7.5 billion of us on the planet, and there isn't anyone who doesn't know about what it's like to feel shit when they get a bit of criticism. It's just, we're in really good company. And I think that can be helpful. I'm going to stop.
And your book will be available to buy when, Sarah? Oh, your amazing perfectionist course. I'm there.
Thank you.
Is it all right if I just put another thing in there? Yeah, okay, so thinking about the mentality, the wiring the brain, for some reason it was triggered when you said to, I suddenly remembered that actually it's like the lizard part of our brain, and goes back from like when we were like in the tribe, maybe you just saw that. And in that, if so this is why we are very self-critical. If we do the wrong thing, then we would be tossed out of the tribe, and then we would probably not survive. So there's that whole, actually, that self-criticism goes back to that center part where it means survival. So I think that's why it is just a continuing practice, and sometimes we get it and sometimes we don't. Yeah.
Can I just follow on from that too? Because I was also thinking, I wonder if it's also to do with, from what you're saying, this idea of fight or flight as well. Do you know what I mean? Like maybe there's a cortisol thing to do with that, you know, the whole like I'm getting really interested in the fight or flight or freeze response linked with trauma and that feels like there's must be a layer of that going on within it all as well, maybe, but I don't know where. But I just thought I'd add that to the pot.
I was just thinking that, sorry Kate, I was just thinking that it's like if you made a mistake and didn't build your, I don't know, I can't really think of the right relevant kind of example, but let's just make one up. Say you made a mistake and you didn't build your heart circle in the Bronze Age properly, and then the bear came and ate you all, then you're all dead. And so like just everything's about safety, isn't it? And you know, in the early days, everything about safety was predominantly about the physical safety in the fight, in the face of danger, in the form of like wild animals and stuff. So I just think, I suspect that it's probably, like you were to Kayla and Kate were saying, is to do with our kind of reptilian brain and our need to be safe at all times. And so we have to look out for the mistakes that we've made in case they are going to threaten our existence.
I just want to build on that a bit, if I may. I'm studying a book at the moment, or it's kind of like a course in a way, on Audible, called Befriending Our Nervous System. And she's picking up a thread in that course that I heard Sophie Banks talking about recently in a podcast, which is, they're saying, it's really interesting. And I'm just offering it because I think, first of all, I think it's super interesting. And secondly, I think there's a lot of credence in it personally. But they were saying, and it's interesting to me, they're both women. They were saying that historically, our nervous system has been very much studied, as lots of things have, by men. And the focus has been on the aroused state of the sympathetic nervous system, so fight, flight. But there's another state to sympathetic response, which is simply just action. Like getting up off the chair requires a sympathetic nervous response. Going to play football requires a sympathetic nervous response. So, yeah, alongside that, there's been a lot more study more recently on primates and nervous system. And they say that something like 90 to 95% of stresses in a bonobo group, in a small ape group, are peer-to-peer. They're not external threats coming in, like the archetypal saber-toothed tiger or the bear or whatever, although those things would certainly warrant and merit a fight-flight response. Actually, the vast majority of social species stress response comes from our peers and, you know, other humans in conflict and connection. And the reason I want to sort of labor that is I think that really speaks directly to this idea of criticism and feedback, because it's not a saber-toothed tiger, it's not a bear. So we're left thinking, oh, why do I feel so icky? Why do I? Well, because it's part of our tribe. And the wiring is there around love and connection and belonging and safety. Peer-to-peer is really important to social beings. So it's not, or rather, as well as wanting to respond to the, you know, the truck that's flying down the street and we leap back off we also, we can also get highly aroused, like an aroused response to our peers feeding back to us, because that's the flip side of the response that bonds us, the tend and befriend, and the wanting to be together in community. And I'm really finding that so fascinating, that idea. And to me, it might illuminate why feedback and things like that feel so vulnerable and similarly, yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Sarah. Wow, that makes so much sense. So I think all of you know that I've been running this Bodywise Women course with Suzanne, and it was week 3 this week, and it's been amazing. Like, it's really lovely and I love it. But something happened on Monday that was a bit of a curveball right towards the end. and we sort of said goodbye and closed the call and everything, and I came away and I just felt so, like you just described, Sarah, like so icky or something. I don't know how to explain it. It was so like heavy, because it was like something that wasn't in the agenda had like come up. And yeah, I mean, I think everything was absolutely fine. There was nothing. I think everyone was really like, the feedback we got afterwards was that people were really taking a lot from it. But I just spent the whole of Monday night and Tuesday just ruminating this thing and just being like, oh God, we haven't, just beating myself up loads. So that makes so much sense, and everything that everyone shared around focusing on that thing. And then it's like I had in mind the story that I was telling, it's this one particular person that I was thinking of. And then I actually I connected with her, and I checked in with her, and she connected with me and like shared really openly. And she was absolutely loving everything that was going on. And I was like, and she gave some constructive feedback. And it was like, oh God, I just felt like, like I haven't been doing it right, all this stuff came in. But what I did was I sat with this thing, and I thought, why is it that I'm focused so much on this when we've been getting such amazing feedback and we both really enjoy what we're doing and it's so rich and lovely? Why am I focusing on this? What is actually happening? Like, what is the worst thing that can happen, right? So I kind of went into that a little bit. And it like the nugget was like that people won't like me. And I thought, oh yeah, so that kind of people pleasing, being liked thing was really like threatened. And I find it so fascinating that I can't remember who said it now, but there was that link of perfectionism. For me, there's that thing of like being liked and creating something that people really like. And then so it's just really interesting to see the connection there. And then being able to let that go. It's like, I'm not here to be liked by all. I'm not here to be liked by all. And even if someone doesn't like me, that's okay. That's really okay. It's kind of like making peace with this thing that I'm not going to be liked by all, and people aren't going to always understand what I'm doing or saying. But my soulful intention, my I guess my heart and stuff is very much in the work that I do. So it was really interesting to kind of bring that full circle into like, oh, the nub of it is I'm scared of not being liked. So I thought I'd just throw that out there and share, because I think Kayla, when at the beginning you're talking about rejection and that kind of rejection feeling and people not responding to what you're offering, and it's vulnerable stuff. So I just want to say, like, finding that gentleness with ourselves, because we're doing the best that we can ultimately. And I really think that we can, for me, this Bodywise Women course is such a learning curve. And before I jumped on here, I had a call with Suzanne, and we're sort of talking about our next session and all that kind of stuff. And it just felt like, felt the growing pains, shall we say. The growing pains are real. So it was really interesting to have that space of that loving, supportive, compassionate space, being able to like address these things. So thank you guys. Hope that made sense.
I like that little saying that I can't remember what it is exactly, but it's basically like something like you can't get to day 100 unless you do day 1. So don't not do day 1 because it's hard, because you'll never get to day 100. And did that make sense? So like, I'm starting out now and I'm really aware of the fact I'm making lots of mistakes, but by the time I get 10 years down the line, I'm never going to get 10 years down the line unless I start. So I have to start. And so kind of allowing the process to be the starting and the learning and the making mistakes in order to get to the point where one day I might be really shit hot at it all. I'm never going to get there unless I actually just start. So I'm just allowing myself to start and really aware of making mistakes, but knowing that I have to get through this process in order to become, you know, my best self in this role.
I just wanted to just sort of circle back to something Amy, I think, said about, I think you said something about putting your heart and your soul into your work, or the things you're putting out into the world. And I really resonate with that, because I think what I often struggle with is being able to separate myself and my own kind of intrinsic value and worth as a human being with the things I'm creating and the things that I'm putting out into the world. Because, you know, whether it's a course I'm running, whether it's a piece of art I'm making, whether it's a photo shoot I've done, like it's got so much of me in it that I find it really difficult to then be able to like tease it out and be like, okay, someone isn't absolutely loving this thing that I'm putting out there, and that's okay, because it isn't actually a reflection on me and my worth as a human. It's just that not everyone's going to love the abstract art that I create. It's just not everyone's cup of tea, and that is fine. But it's just really difficult to, when you're so entangled and you're so like, you put so much love and heart and soul and passion and thought and all the rest of it into this thing, whatever that thing is. It's really, I find it really difficult to then just be able to kind of step back and be like, okay, that's okay. I just get really caught up in like, they don't like me. And then it's about, yeah, why does that matter so much? And yeah, I can very easily tip into like, oh, I'll just give up. I'll just stop doing any of this stuff. And it's just based on like one tiny little bit of, yeah, so that's a really good, I think we're all people who are doing stuff that we put our heart and soul into, so maybe that is a consideration, isn't it, that we are not our thing that we're putting out into the world. There is that, like, we're valuable as people, and yeah, like you say, not everyone's going to like us, and that's okay. I have to just keep reminding myself that, because I think that's a very very long running theme in my life, is like trying to please people, trying to be liked by everyone. But it's actually impossible, isn't it? Because there's such a huge variety of people in the world. I'm not going to be everyone's cup of tea. So yeah, thanks. Good, useful stuff. This is all, yeah. Glad it's being recorded, because I feel like there's so much wisdom coming out. It's great.
Rachel, I just want to add to something you said there, or lay another thread alongside that, which is it needn't be zero sum. You know, this idea of we're not going to be liked by everyone, we're not going to be loved by anyone, we're not going to be appreciated by everyone, and all of that. Sometimes that can be the end of the sentence. So it's like zero sum. We're either loved by everyone or we're not loved by everyone. And I think when we're not loved by everyone or appreciated by everyone, or our work isn't appreciated, and to me, that brings a whole bunch of energy back to me that I can then share or invest somewhere else. Because I'm not out there hustling for my worthiness with a bunch of people who aren't going to get my stuff. Like when I worked in corporates and started to speak up in corporations about the lack of compassion in leadership, the lack of humanity in the workplace, the lack of connection in the workplace, that everything was about external values rather than intrinsic values. Some people really got it and really wanted to have that discussion, and were leading that discussion elsewhere and really wanted to get with that. Some people were kind of like, whatever, sounds kind of interesting. And some people were just like really freaking rude, like really rude and aggressive and things like that. And at the time I took that on and was like, oh no, then my ideas must be wrong, or my feelings must be wrong, or whatever. Now I feel like, whoa, thank you so much for making that so clear. I am not going to do a little jig in front of you until you throw a shilling in my hat. In fact, fuck off at some level, with lots of love, you know, like nicely passive aggressive, but you know what I mean? Like, thank you for being so clear. Again, we're back to apes. You've shown me the pink rump of your arse. Thank you so much. I can now go off and play with the apes who want to share the bananas, or whatever the analogy is. But I've just got so much more energy to go someplace else.
I've been doing this marketing course, and it relates to what Sarah was talking about like how we put our work out there and things. And I found some what's it called, like numbers, like the facts, quite helpful, like because it takes us through the, like, people know you, people like you, people trust you, and that's kind of almost like when you're selling a course or whatever, they have to go through, you know, most people have to go through that process to go, okay, yes, I will invest in, you know, a course or whatever with this person. So they need to get to know you, and then they become, you know, they begin liking you, and then they build trust in you. And you can see how that is relevant in kind of the way that we put our work out there, and because apparently like 80% of sales are made in the 5th to 12th time you follow up. So people have to see you 5 to 12 times before deciding they wish to invest, or, you know, making their decision of whether they like or don't like, or whatever that may be. And I think we've got that with all of our senses, because I did, when I was working in child psychology, I did this neuro study on food and how that affects our neurobiology. And you have to try something at least 15 times before you can decide whether you like it or not, because by that 15th time you may have developed a taste for it or might not. So there's, you know, on all the levels, there's those kind of things going on. So I just thought I'd throw that in the pot. But yeah.
Oh, I love that, Kate. Actually, that really resonates with me as well, because like I'm like trying to promote my World Women Dance session for next week, and I'm thinking like, oh, but you came last time, why are you now not invested for life? Like, why don't you want to come every week or every time I do it? Because you loved it when you came and you said how much you loved it, and why are you not here now? You know, and that makes so much sense to know that it's okay, and people need more time to get to know me and like me and trust me. And yeah, that's really comforting to know that, actually, that there is time, and it's not, yeah, but it's not about me, like them liking me. It's liking the product. Well, me as an extension of the product. I don't know, I'm still working on all that stuff. But thank you, Kate. I like that nugget of wisdom. I'm kind of getting a bit into sales psychology. I know that sounds awful, doesn't it? It sounds really sleazy, but for it to be sleazy, do you know what I mean? Like, I feel like, oh, I shouldn't admit that. It makes me seem like a sleazy saleswoman. But that's just one of my stories I'm telling myself. But anyway. Thank you, Kate.
Yeah.
I like that.
Do you know what, Kayla? When I think of you, I think of sleazy saleswoman. That's exactly what comes to mind. No, I'm joking. That is not true.
Oh no, I'm gonna take that into my primal being now. No, not really.
I'm just pulling your leg.
Thank you. I'm really aware of that right now, though. Like, sometimes when I try and like sell something and I notice there's a side of me that gets a bit like, hey, don't you need this in your life? And then I'm like, who's that? Is that me? Is that sales Kayla? Or are people going to think like, oh, who's this super fake woman, you know? And I have all this stuff going on, and it's really blocking, isn't it? But anyway, that's a maybe slightly different topic, but thank you, Amy.
Yeah, thank you so much, everyone. I feel like we could just sit here and talk for hours, really. But yeah, thanks so much for bringing this, Rachel. It's been really, really juicy, and yeah, so fascinating to hear how we all feel it in perhaps slightly different ways, and all the ways that we kind of try and transform that and, yeah, help ourselves in that. So that's really lovely to hear the sharing of resources. Yeah, and obviously if you want to carry on sharing, please feel free to use the WhatsApp group I know I feel so much lighter. I can tell you that. I feel so much lighter, and just like whew, being able to know that I'm not alone and that there's stuff that I can do to help myself. So it feels like a really like juicy, nourishing, and also quite a practical session, which is a great combination, isn't it? Of just like, yeah, cool, being and doing and all these things. So does anyone, should we just have a quick checkout? We'll just have a quick checkout round, and maybe just say, you know, something that you're taking away, or something that has changed for you, how you're feeling, any of those things, or all of those things. Just aware of time, people have other things. But yeah, awesome. Have a quick checkout, shall we? Feel free to popcorn styly.
Okay, I'll go. I'll be quick. I mean, all of that was so brilliant and so helpful and so useful. And I feel like I need to watch the recording back to like, yeah, fully absorb it all. But it's just, I think if I had to pick one thing out of all of that that really resonates, is just that thing of not being alone. I think Sarah, you said something about common humanity, and I think that's just so, I think especially at the moment in lockdown, it's so easy to feel a bit alone with stuff, and actually talking to everybody here and realizing that it's, you know, all of this stuff is stuff that, you know, we're all rumbling with, and that's just been really, really helpful. And just, yeah, hearing how different people approach it and deal with it. And so, yeah, a really lovely mix of kind of heartfelt sharing and then some practical tips and ideas and things as well. So brilliant. Thank you all so much.
I'm going to jump in. I've written floods of notes because I didn't realise it was recorded. So I was like, well, I better take notes for everybody, but never mind. But for me as well. But, I think the one thing that really resonates with me is, Sarah was saying about just shifting that focus of remembering about like why you do. And also Amy, do you know, ever since you said this at the social enterprise thing, like remember your why, like I hear you in my head every time I start losing my focus, remember your why. And but not in a scary big way like that, but so that really resonates with the idea of, you know, remembering to, like, you're in, well, because I'm being in service for other people and it's about them, you know, and then that will hopefully help free me up from getting, you know, spending till 1 o'clock at night on Canva, you know, getting every detail right and every bit of design right, you know, until it's good enough, you know, it is already good enough. And because I'm doing it for them, you know, it's not about me and getting it right. And yeah, so that for me is my takeaway. I absolutely love that. Yeah, thank you everybody, that was super rich. I feel very rich and wealthy by all of your wonderful presence.
Yeah, it feels like it's been like a really sort of nutritious buffet of all sorts of things, you know, some really lovely sort of like nuggets of wisdom, some interesting kind of, you know, some psychology stuff in there as well, and some personal tips. And yeah, I think I also am going to return to the recording and sort of to kind of pick those out, because I've certainly got a bit of a Teflon-like brain at the moment for all sorts of different reasons. But yeah, so thank you everybody for everything you shared here. It's been very rich indeed. Thank you.
Yeah, I want to thank everyone as well. I think it was a cracking topic, Rachel. Really, yeah, seemed to be such a common thread for all of us. Yeah, Kate, thank you for reminding me of KLT, Know, Like, Trust. I do resist it, but the way you laid it out made me think, yeah, I need to go back into the arena, because I'm the K bit baffles me. I don't want to be known. I just want to be going along under the radar a lot of the time. Which isn't to say that I, you know, take for granted that I'll be liked or trusted. It's not about that, but I don't even allow that to get in the space sometimes. So there's quite a challenge in that for me, and the work I'm doing now, I feel like I really want to be in that space. So thank you for reminding me of that particularly. And yeah, thanks to everyone for sharing from your heart and bones. It's really lovely to be nourished by that and to feel it coming in. Thank you.
Kate, I have moved house every 2 years all my life, annoyingly, not ever on purpose. And so I'm always new, and I always think that people don't like me when I'm new, and then after a while they kind of work out sort of harmless, and then people kind of understand me a bit and then they like me. So I've always had this thing of like, people don't like me when I'm new. Now I'm starting to think maybe that's a kind of blessing, really, because I don't try that. Like, I don't feel the need for everybody to like me, because I feel like eventually they will. But now I'm just thinking maybe they just don't know me, and then when they do know me, then they move to like me, and then maybe they might move to trust me if it's going to be like a friendship, and maybe they'll just stay in the kind of ambivalent like if it's just a kind of colleague thing or something. So that's useful. Thank you. And thank you very much, everybody else. It's really nice to have a small break from the manicness of my world, and I shall imminently return to it and probably never think about all of this again, because full my life is at the moment, but I enjoyed being in it for the moment. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. I like a good quote. So the things I've written done are better done than perfect, and you won't get to day 100 without day one. Pop them up on my little wall so it reminds me every morning. At the moment myself, I'm battling with a lot of criticism, which I always do after the meeting, after meetings. I get very nervous about sharing and stuff. So I will do the usual self-fire. But yeah, I have found it very helpful and nourishing, and to listen to you all. So thank you all for sharing.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. Just so much. Yeah, I'm like kind of lost for words, really. Just really grateful for you all and all your amazing wisdom. Thank you all so much. Sarah has a poem for us, I believe. Do you want to take us out, Sarah?
Go ahead, take it to the bridge. Yeah, before I do that, I did just want to say, and this isn't me jumping in off the back of what you just said, Kate, or it is that, but it's not me rescuing you, because I don't think you need to be rescued, and I wouldn't want to. But I love what you're doing with the dog's tale. I really love it. And I think that you are, for me, you're really putting out there that get to know us in a really gentle, invitational way that just feels so damn authentic. So I wanted to put that in the space, lady. Both of yous. Yeah. Okay, so here's a poem. I always think poems choose to be with us rather than we choose them, and maybe this is the case with this one. So maybe there's an invitation with this one to close our eyes. I won't, because I won't be able to read it, but if you want to close your eyes. This poem is called Let This Darkness Be a Bell Tower, and it's by Rilke, Rainer Maria Rilke. Quiet friend who has come so far, feel how your breathing makes more space around you. Let this darkness be a bell tower, and you the bell. As you ring, what batters you becomes your strength. Move back and forth into the change. What is it like, such intensity of pain? If the drink is bitter, turn yourself to wine. In this uncontainable night, be the mystery at the crossroads of your senses, the meaning discovered there. And if the world has ceased to hear you, Say to the silent earth, I flow. To the rushing water speak, I am.